Welcome to the Hastings Shadmehry Show.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And I'm Mali Shadmehry.
Together, we own Hastings Shadmehry, an Atlanta-based law firm specializing in family law.
This is a space where we talk all things family law and all topics that touch the area of family law, from divorce to custody to self-growth, personal empowerment, and more. We bring you the truth, from our wolf pack to yours. Hello, and welcome to the Hastings Shadmehry Show. I'm Mali Shadmehry.
And I'm Andee Hastings.
And we are so excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about summer parenting time, given that summer is coming up. But before we get into that topic, let's do our check-in. Andee Hastings, are you feeling like a warrior or a diplomat today?
Definitely feeling like a warrior.
Okay, tell us why.
I don't know if there's a full moon.
There was. I'll tell you about that in a sec.
Okay. See, I knew it. This is a thing, so that y'all know. It definitely, moon patterns and everything affect us and our sweet clients. But definitely feeling like a warrior. There's a lot of conflict going on right now. A lot of people feeling kind of emotionally abused and battered by people with whom they have relationships, kids caught in the crossfire. And if you ever want to see ferocious warrior Andee, just let some kids get caught in the crossfire of some parental nonsense.
That's right.
Cannot.
Oh, and it's a force to be reckoned with when Andee is in the zone. Okay.
How about you?
Warrior
or diplomat?
I definitely a warrior, but I'm going to expand on what you said, Andee. Okay, so Andee's a Scorpio. And I'm an Aries, in case y'all were just dying to know. And Aries and Scorpio are known to make some of the fiercest of combinations, and we really do. And so Andee has a very cunning way about her. And when she says warrior, yes, it can be brute force and blunt and lethal, but it's usually going to be accompanied first by a lot of planning and very well thought out, complex approaches. And it's really good for someone like me because I'm very much the blunt approach, and I can come in and close and execute, and Andee will help me slow down and really think through approaches and all these things. But Andee is correct. There was a full moon, and it was a full moon in Scorpio. So
how did I not know that?
I know. I can't believe I didn't text you that. And one of our good friends who has joined us as a guest, Kim Beatty from Beatty Legal Services. Hey, Kimmy. She and I always joke that we need an in-house moon consultant to tell us what's going on with the moon phases. So if you're interested in applying for that position, please come on over. We need a moon consultant. But it is a thing. The moon affects the water, the tide, the ocean, all the things. We are made of water as human beings, and so when the moon cycles shift, it does impact us in a lot of different ways, physically, scientifically, spiritually, if you want to believe that, all the things. So we had a full moon in Scorpio, and apparently it was all about shedding old ways of thinking, old patterns that are no longer serving us, and it was all about having the courage to step over and break that cycle. And so that full moon was on the 12th, which I think was Monday.
Yes.
And then yesterday, Tuesday, was a day where it was basically, it was okay if you were still feeling chaotic. You're settling into a new place. So the fact that you said that, this Scorpio felt the Scorpio full moon. And I'm definitely a warrior coming out of that full moon, honestly. And I did sort of think through, what am I shedding? What am I leaving behind to keep evolving? And so warrior mode definitely going on over here, both in the gym, in the office, ready for some trials, ready to see our wolf pack just obliterate and just cut out the BS, leave our clients alone, leave their kids alone. We need to move forward, get out of the way. That's my mindset today. Yes. Girl. Oh, I didn't wear my wolf ring. Oh, show everybody. That's our wolf ring, our signature Hastings Shadmehry wolf ring.
I can't believe I wore mine and you didn't wear yours. That never happens.
Oh, never again. I'm sorry, guys. Never again. Okay, so without further ado, let's chit-chat. Let's yap about summer parenting time. Okay, so generally, I'll lay the foundation, then we'll get into it. Okay. You have what's called a parenting plan. Parenting plan is a document that dictates who has what time with the children, and also all kinds of co-parenting things. Anything co-parenting related goes into a parenting plan. Where do we exchange the children? How do we discipline the children? What do we do with homework? How do we deal with the children's passports? Who has final decision-making authority on medicals, education, extracurricular, all the things? And so we're honing in today on a specific component, which is summer parenting time. It's its own little niche in the parenting plan. And summer parenting time is different from regular parenting time, and we're going to talk about that. So let's go there first. Is what is summer parenting time? And I know it sounds obvious, but how is it different from regular parenting time? Or in other words, what is regular parenting time? How does it differ from summer?
Right. It's a great question. Regular parenting time is just how parents operate with respect to their children throughout the school year, typically. So if you have an every other weekend schedule, like one parent has a weekend, the other parent has during the week, and then you alternate. Come summer, it changes. The kids aren't in school. People want to take vacations. We've got summer camps, all those things. And so typically we have a different schedule for the summer as opposed to what is regular parenting time during the school year. And summer parenting time supersedes regular parenting time during the school year. There's only a couple of holidays that we deal with in the summer, and often one of them's Father's Day. So that's typically going to supersede even the summer parenting
Father's
schedule.
Day, 4th of July.
Yes.
Memorial Day is a little bit before the summer break.
Usually in Georgia it is.
Yep. And then Labor Day is after.
Yes.
So let's hone in on that. So we've got summer parenting time, but within that are other holidays, 4th of July and Father's Day. And typically holidays take priority over regular parenting time, which is the every other weekend, regular parenting time. And so what do we typically do with holidays, the summer holidays? Do summer holidays trump the summer parenting time? How does that work?
So not every person carves out July 4th because that can mess with your summer parenting time arrangements. Pretty much always Father's Day is going to be carved out, as it should. And so let's use that as an example. So for instance, let's say your summer parenting time is a week on, week off schedule, but the Father's Day falls within, say, Mom's week. Dad's going to get Father's Day, and how you define it, whether or not it includes the whole weekend, if it includes morning to evening on the actual day of Father's Day, depends. You've got a lot of room to move in there as far as what makes sense. But that holiday, Father's Day, is going to supersede summertime. So if it already falls in Dad's week, then great. But if it doesn't, Dad's also going to get that time with the children during the summer.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're being really nitpicky, and we are. Because I have had cases where these sort of details, specifically what happens with the summer holidays that fall within this summer parenting time, when those things are not addressed in a parenting plan, which does happen, people will come hire us years later and say, I cannot explain to you the amount of fighting that we have every year because of how this parenting plan is vaguely worded. And sometimes a vaguely worded parenting plan is great and it's done on purpose in a lot of ways, but typically you need something more specific, and you do need a lawyer who can really think through these nitpicky things, or you're going to come hire us later and say, we are fighting every year. Right. And I need to modify this whole parenting plan because we didn't properly word what we're doing in summer. I see that a lot, improperly worded summer parenting plans.
I completely agree. And, one thing we tell people when they enter into a summer parenting plan, or just a parenting plan in general, is the ideal is if y'all can have this document, you stick it in a drawer, and you never look at it again. Yep. And you just live your lives and work together. But that document is there in the event of a disagreement. So like Mally's saying, if it's vague, and say you're getting along at the time of your divorce, so you're like, we don't need all those details. We don't want to pick each other apart. The details are there in the event that you can't agree. And that's our job, is to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So we need something to help guide you in those instances when you can no longer agree because things change. And the devil is truly in the details with a parenting plan. Summer parenting in particular, like we need to get very detailed about who maintains the passport, what type of lead time do you have to request it, notice on vacations, those sorts of things. So there's lots of things, and I may be jumping ahead.
Well, that's fine. We are going to talk about that. But so let's talk about, so here's what we've just said, is there's regular parenting time, like Andee said. That's when school year, if standard parenting time in Georgia is going to look like there's one primary physical custodian who has the children the majority of the time. Then the other party is going to have every other weekend, usually Thursday to Monday. That's your regular parenting time. Then there's, remember, special carve-out, summer. And there is what we call the go-to summer parenting time. So we're going to talk about that. What is standard? I will say this. If you have 50-50 custody, joint physical custody, typically what we do is just keep that 50-50 schedule going during the summer. And sometimes 50-50 is a 2-2-3 or week on, week off. So it just varies. But you do have to think about, look, if I want to travel for 2 weeks with the children and go out of the country, I've had families that travel for a month at a time to go explore Europe or whatever it is. And they want the children to be able to enjoy in these experiences and these cultural, growth opportunities. Judges would take that very seriously, and guardians as well, to sort of understand what can we get these children access to. If they have, the parents have the ability to go travel the world, well, then we want a summer parenting plan that can go with the family in that regard. So if you do 50-50 parenting time, for example, during the school year, usually we're going to keep 50-50 during the summer, but there's the potential to carve out several weeks at a time or a couple weeks at a time for people to travel. So keep that in mind. But there is a standard parenting time in the summer. What does that look like, Andee?
So it's kind of changed over time, like everything involving parenting plans. It used to be typically each parent would get 2 weeks of time during the summer. The regular schedule would apply, and then they would get 2 weeks of uninterrupted time, which could be either consecutive weeks or non-consecutive weeks. And that was just sort of the gold standard of summer parenting time, to just allow people, like Mali was saying, to take a trip or, go on a vacation, whatever you want to do. But now we're seeing it's more common that people will often do week on, week off in the summertime because the kids aren't in school. So, having extended time and basically equal time with each parent is becoming more common. The parents can schedule their camps, their summer camps during their time. It's a stretch of time at a time. And so we're seeing that more and more frequently, that people will essentially divide the summer. That's, of course, if you live in proximity. If this is all totally different if you've got people that live in 2 different states, for instance, and that kind of thing. So that's a different issue. But
yeah, in cases where we had parties in different states, I do think that a lot of times judges are more inclined to give the person who has less time with the children during the year more of the summer parenting time. It varies by case, but that's just one option. So if somebody lives in a different state, they're looking at potentially a little more time in the summer to make up for lost time, although both parents are going to be given good time in the summer to go travel with the kids and make those memories and have vacations and things like that. And in Georgia, like Andee was saying, it used to be the standard parenting time for summer was 2 weeks. And we really have seen a shift to the standard becoming rotate the children week on, week off during the summer. But obviously, if there's a case where we see this a lot, there's a parent that's just not capable of having the children for that long, that often, a lot of times it's people that have addictions, maybe some mental health issues, things like that, where they benefit from having less parenting time, more short spurts, more frequently though, rather than extended. But I will give you a warning there, is that most people are going to be given a lot of time in the summer. It has to be extreme circumstances for that to be limited. It's very rare that, for instance, someone would just have 1 week only in the summer, uninterrupted. That's just extremely, extremely rare. So definitely warm your mind up to that the way the court is going to look at this summertime this is for the children. They need to make memories with their family, go to family reunions, do all the fun things, and they're going to try to structure a parenting plan that's going to get them there. So that's sort of what we're looking at with the default kind of what's normal, at least in Georgia. And Andee, you were talking about passports and travel. So that sort of coincides with this summer parenting plan language. So what you're going to see in a parenting plan is that there's a provision that carves out the summer parenting time. That's the actual schedule, who gets what and when, and do the holidays trump. That's where we talk about all of these specifics. But you're going to have additional language in the parenting plan that are going to sort of correlate and impact the activities in the summer. And that would be the travel notice provisions and the passport provisions. So can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So typically, and unless it's week on, week off, and you've specifically defined when the weeks start and who gets the week first, you also have to give each other notice of just which weeks you're going to have if your parenting plan is written that way. But then if you're going to take a trip, if you're going to remove the children from the state of Georgia or outside the country, there's additional notice requirements with regards to those specific trips that we include. You have to provide information on where they're going to be. Sometimes we include the requirement to provide an itinerary, a way to contact them in the age of cell phones. The whole point of this is the other parent has the right to know where their kids are when they're outside the norm of their everyday living. And so you have to provide those pieces of information to the other parent. And additionally, like for instance, if you're taking a trip with a passport, typically one parent is going to maintain the passport when it's not in use, and will put provisions in there. You know, if you're taking a trip, you have to that requires the passport. The parent who doesn't have possession notifies the other parent within X amount of time that they need it. That means the parent maintaining it has to provide it to the traveling parent within a certain period of time. And then upon return, it has to be returned to the parent that maintains it. And we usually put pretty tight language in there about that because, you know, unfortunately, there are people who after a divorce don't get along and will play games with the other to spite them, regardless of whether or not that can hurt the children. And so they might play games with not turning it over in a specific period of time or that sort of thing. So we provide for that so that in the event that somebody tries to pull that, we can get in there and try to help resolve the issue.
Yeah, and what I would add to that, just a couple of notes, is that, so Andee mentioned at the beginning of what you just said, there's language usually when we address summer parenting time that says something like this. In even years, mom gets to pick which weeks she wants for her extended parenting time, her travel time, basically. And in odd years, dad gets to pick first. And if it's your year to pick first, you have to pick your dates and let the other party know by this date, these are the weeks that I'm picking for this summer, and I get priority here. And just keep that in mind. There's sort of like a prioritization communication provision about sharing your chosen dates for what you're going to have your weeks in the summer. And I usually include language in my parenting plans that delineates if you're traveling internationally, you have to give a little bit more advance notice to the other side with the details. I actually do always include itinerary language and say you got to at least share where you're going to be staying, the names of everyone that's traveling with you guys, where you can be reached, and of course the dates and all of that, things like flight numbers, cruise ship information, all that kind of stuff. International travel, we expect a little bit more advance notice to the other parent, and then domestic travel is less notice. It's usually like 14 days, something like that, notice ahead of time. We do see sometimes, a lot of times, when a case is pending, whether that's a divorce case or another type of custody-related case, contempt or modification. Some are, especially in the divorce cases where there's not a parenting plan set yet and the case is just pending, there's something called a standing order that we've talked about before. It's an order, court order that goes into place anytime there's a case pending. And in that order, it says you can't remove the children from the jurisdiction of the court during the pendency of this case. So you shouldn't be taking the child out of state, really, during the pendency of the case unless the other side agrees. So Andee, can you talk to us a little bit about how that kind of plays out and how we need to think about that while the cases are pending?
Yeah, so we deal with that a lot. And different courts have different language in their standing orders, which also makes it tricky because some courts carve out, they understand that unless it's for family vacation, you can't remove the children from the jurisdiction. But generally speaking, you can't remove the children from the jurisdiction without agreement or a court order. And so, typically when we're dealing with cases, we see that coming in advance and we start working on it as far in advance as possible to try to come up with an agreement and or ask the court for a temporary hearing in order to address that issue and hopefully get a court order that allows parents to go on family vacations during summertime. And again, that's affected by, the attitudes of parties during cases.
And having a good lawyer.
Well,
because people abuse this, and a judge is not going to look kindly on you if you are just to be spiteful, saying, standing order says you can't travel, so no, I don't agree that you get to take the kids to Myrtle Beach this summer.
Disney.
Currently
Disney, dealing with that.
Disney a lot. And judges are not going to treat vacation drama as an emergency. So if these things are arising during summer and you're going to ask for an emergency hearing because they won't let you go on vacation, you may be too little too late. You need to be thinking about these things January, February, March, leading into summer to get a temporary hearing to address it before the vacation happens. You may be SOL if it's on the eve and the other side's objecting. And then you're in this position of, well, do I break a court order and go on this trip, even though they won't give me permission? Or, it's a really tough predicament. And if you're the party that's being spiteful, it's not going to look good on you. Because remember, a judge is looking for what's best for these children and what are the memories they can go make. So unless someone has a serious addiction problem or they are exposing the children to someone that's a convicted felon that's really going to impact the children, things like that, you need to agree to let the children travel. That's general. And obviously your lawyers got to weigh in on that. But I've had lawyers, opposing counsel that do not, especially people that do not focus on family law, they dabble in other areas. They just use this as a power trip and say, well, this standing order says you can't take the kids unless we agree. So no, you're not. And that will not look, a judge will not look kindly on that later.
Cannot agree more.
So, and we've talked about, and that's one of the biggest takeaways, is we want a structured parenting plan that's going to lay out, worst case, what we do if we can't agree. And hopefully, like Andee said, you can put that parenting plan away. I have plenty of families who over the years have said, yeah, our parenting plan says this, but this actual arrangement that we've been doing amongst ourselves works way better, and we're just going to keep doing that. So just keep in mind, the more you deviate from a parenting plan, the more you strengthen a case in the future to come back and modify it to adhere to what you've been doing outside the bounds of the parenting plan. Right. But summer is an interesting breed, and you need to make sure you're giving it specific attention. I would say a good 30% of my litigation every year has the catalyst has been improperly worded summer parenting time. And there'll be like other issues in the parenting plan too, but what sets it off is that summer. So definitely pay special attention to it. Do you have anything else to add on this topic?
Really just the same thing. I deal with this all the time too and we err on the side of being super detailed. You can't really necessarily hurt yourself by focusing in on those details. So if you're being encouraged by an attorney to be general and not nail it down, you may end up in a situation like what we're talking about where you end up having to litigate it later. So it might frustrate you to have to think through those details on the front end, but I promise that it will.
Worth it.
It's worth it, and it will protect you on the back end from litigation, and that's part of our job. To the extent that we can do that, we want to foresee everything possible and try to deal with it. We can't foresee everything, but we can foresee everything possible based on our experience every day.
Totally agree. And with that, we're going to let you go and wish you a happy summer. Hope you have great vacations, some beach time, whatever it is. And that's it. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. The Hastings Shadmehry Show is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Our email address is podcast@hsfamilylaw.com. Come find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Hastings Shadmehry.
The Hastings Shadmehry Show is a production of Hastings Shadmehry Family Law and 1066 Productions. It is produced and edited by Ned Hastings.